1. Welcome to this Starry. I'm back with another stream. I know it's wild, like twice in a week. That's crazy. Yes, actually later on today we have an Among Us stream. But there's a few things that we had to get situated. I know earlier I had said that we were going to have a stream which pretty much talked about like the lore of the world, and lo and behold, here it is today. Let me pull up my Twitch chat on the side just in case. Perfect. I'm gonna put in the Twitch chat. Howdy. Again, it is me, your lovely DM Starry. I'm here with the one, the only Maya Collins, aka Neve, aka Bestie Boo. Neve is going to be recapping what happened the previous. I don't want to say like previous 12 sessions before session 13, the one that just dropped. Which session 13 will be dropping tonight, on either tonight or tomorrow on YouTube. I will have that link in the bio of our TikTok. Oh my god, excuse the burp. In the bio of our Twitch. And then of course the links to our TikTok and our Twitch will be also all around. I'll have all the links out. Also, I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us. I think last stream had the most views on a stream that I've ever had. It's gotta go crazy, kind of go nutty. But without further ado, let me introduce you to the Starryverse. So, the Starryverse is pretty much a universe in which I built all my D&D campaigns. The last D&D campaign set up this trilogy. It ended in the party facing off against two different BBEGs. Both were overgods. One was named Stylus, which is a warforged controlled by a snake, who then later became an overgod due to his ability to gain souls. Stylus grew this robot army and decided, hey, you know the best way to take over everything, all the planes? What if I just combine them into one giant plane and just made it all mine? He did this in the name of Ariset Whitlock, a dead friend that he and Chicago shared. Chicago is one of the gods in this current campaign, also the mother of Grishelda, a current party NPC. As Stylus goes about his rampage throughout the Feywild and the Nine Hells and the Nether, in the material plane, there is this god, the Oni, an Oni god which I guess now they're called Eldritch, but I called them Oni back then. An Oni god by the name of Crystal and her daughter Clarissa. And Crystal and Clarissa were just living in the Underdark, vibing, doing whatever the fuck they want. Until they realized something. They had no power. And in that, they decided to use the party to get what they wanted. In the overworld, there was something that existed called the Celestial Crown, which was a form of divine power. It's like, you know, Shadow's inhibitor rings? Yeah, instead of inhibitor, they enhance someone's divine power. And she decided, how about I get that and my lost Oni crown? And when she got both of them, she combined them together and formed a crown of the Overgod, in which she melded into her body. She absorbed that. And she was able to become an Overgod who decided, hey, Stylus, I like your plan. Let's do it together. And so they try to take over together. Unfortunately, they have been defeated. They were risen up by, again, the combine of the new gods and the old gods and the party together. And they defeated Stylus, killing him as his mantle of a creator. The god of creation and engineering and technology was passed down to Taz's god, the Unknown, who his identity is still yet unknown to you guys, to the party. I know you don't. I know you don't. And that is the premise of the Starryverse. Of course, you're wondering who is the Crimson Knives and the Aegis Consortium. After Clarissa's defeat, someone called the Ringmaster, a man who studied humbly under her, well, until she got him jacked up by the party, decided that, hey, maybe it's time I continue her work, but in my own name, before he was abruptly stopped by a group of mages known by the Aegis Consortium, which formed this large spy network, kind of like the CIA, but you give them magical abilities and you throw them in a world. It's pretty much what they are. And then 500 later's current campaign. Of course, the storyline is a little bit wacky. That is because I put a lot of the Lego pieces on the board and then I built them brick by brick until we reach the final session where everything comes around in a full circle. and everything is complete. Now, from what I just told you about that combined world, you probably know about Raylan's god and everything. So, without further ado, I am going to mute myself, and I'm going to pass the mic over to a dearest friend. Neve, go ahead and recap them on what has happened in this campaign for the last 12 sessions, including session 0.
All right, that I can do. Starting off with session 0. Each of the characters were, living their own lives within the world. They didn't meet at the tavern. They didn't have this horrible, tragic backstory that led them all together. No. They all had their own individual pasts. And for one reason or another, they met this halfling named Griselda, who invited them to the Aegis Consortium. Some of them were told the full story of what to expect, some of them not as much, but they all agreed. They were trained with the Consortium for a couple months, and some learned to hone their abilities, whether they were magical or martial arts, and others learned basic skills, like how to navigate with the world or how to do basic math. But in the end, they were all deemed competent enough, and a team was formed, which brought us the party that we know today. Well, new, but we'll get back to that later. They all met at their first team meeting and introduced themselves, and, well, later on. First, Griselda and the director, who was named Silas Thornbridge, introduced themselves and briefed them on their mission to investigate a murder of a noble within the city of Maratma. They would set up everything, but in the meantime, the party was to get to know each other. And party introductions happened. They started with Cersei, a dancer who fell off the table while performing a tap dance, Malkin, a dragonborn warlock who showed them some cool runes that he had on him, Maya and Alsamar, who claimed to be a fortune teller, Taz, a high elf detective, Yaku, a budgie who could play the pan flute, according to her, though no one believed her after her shoddy performance, Raylan, a Yaku... Whoa! Sorry, reading my notes and I got messed up there. Raylan, a tiefling who was in jail, and Leto, a younger tiefling who really liked money. Griselda returned to the room having coffee and a bagel, which she would be seen with frequently throughout the campaign. They would be expected to act like nobles and attend a ball within Maratma, and each of them would have various missions that would lead to the party's success. So off they went. They'd be staying within a safe house and were not to destroy it. However, once they found the safe house, Raylan left them to go stay at an inn, threw turkey sandwiches at people, and knocked over a child's lemonade stand. Also, would be present throughout the campaign. And that was session 0. Session 1, Raylan came back as everyone woke up in the morning and went back to his antics and started throwing sandwiches at people, including Yaku and Maya. Maya, however, was pulled aside by Griselda. Griselda gave her a briefcase, which would show a map including where they were to go and who they were meant to find on missions. Maya was not to let this fall in the wrong hands. And on the topic of wrong hands, Griselda asked Maya to finish missions by any means necessary. They rejoined the party, and they all went back to sleep, although Raylan got kicked out, sent back to his inn. And they regrouped in the morning. Griselda went over the various tasks that they would have. Cersei and Yaku would act as guards, much to Cersei's disappointment when he found out he would have to wear a uniform, which he did manage to get out of, surprisingly. They would use that as leverage to find information, mingle among the guests, just, infiltration things. Leda would look for a Lady Marianne, a very flashy woman who might have information. Malkin and Taz would look for a half-blind lord who was also a general, who might have information. And Maya and Raylan would look for a tiefling vampire who was someone supposed to be with the party. And they went to the ball. The lady was found. She knew the woman who was killed, and that it was pretty much just around the corner. The Lord said that he would help them get there, to this house nearby where the murder occurred. That he would give them time to do it. He would make sure none of his men were around. Maya and Raylan met Kamish. He was a red vampire tiefling, and Raylan and Kamish went gambling. Eventually, they left once Everyone shared the information that they got, and Taz went on his own towards the house. The party managed to catch him in time to see an ambush by 3 crimson-cloaked rogues. The party defeated them, with only Makin going down, with 2 of them being dead, and the other one just being pretty bad shape. They thought they'd won, but something happened. The party took a stack of what we call hive mind, which will come into play later. That sums up Session 1. Session 2 starts at the same scene. The captain and his men arrived, as they might when there's a scuffle going down within their area of patrol. The party was truthful about what happened, and the general told them to leave immediately. Great. Leto ripped off the arm of the living man, while Makin ate the other bodies. That's wonderful. Makin and Taz began to question the third one, which caused the man to be stressed and scared. That didn't stop him from pulling out a trick under his sleeve, though, as he activated a sigil, and the party was knocked out. With the rogue in front of them, he was tied up, and a rune on his neck was exposed. Griselda was there and explained she didn't know much of what happened, but this was a chance for them to find out more. However, they also found out that something else had happened, as they all began to feel burning on their backs. When prompted, the rogue laughed and gestured as much as he could at Makin and said he did it. This was his doing. The party had various ways of getting information, with Leto, our lovely 12-year-old tiefling monk, putting him in a chokehold and twisting his good arm back, so much so that it caused him enough pain to finally start spilling. He explained that he worked to aid at Project Stylus, that he was given a mission folder by this group called the Crimson Knives, and was told to meet at a predetermined spot. Their assassins didn't know much past that. Kamish recognized the name Stylus, and Makin had a much less satisfied reaction and bit his fingers. He bit a sigil, though, and was not doing so hot. Cersei was able to stabilize him, while Maya dragged Raylan out of the room before he could cause issues too. Taz left the room as well and followed Griselda. She was crying, and Taz tried to question her, ask what was wrong, and implied that he might be a trustworthy figure for her to talk to. She got a bit upset at that, and changed the topic to Taz's back. Taz showed her his back, and she saw a sigil that she might know something about. Back with this rogue, Kamish actually ate his fingers. Didn't just bite. They were gone. Yaku, meanwhile, ran off, yelling something about figurines that she had to go check on, and Maya and Raylan re-entered the room. This red-cloaked figure said that there was someone within the midst of the consortium. There had been infiltrators previously, but there was still someone there. And that someone had priorities as well. Griselda was the #1 target of this group that the man came from. Raylan was also high on the kill list. Everyone except Makin, Maya, and Yaku were on this list. Makin was on a separate one, a hands-off list. He didn't expand further, as Griselda rejoined the group. She explained that this might have something to do with a shadow government, the Aegis Consortium's arch-nemesis, you could say. It's called the Veiled Assembly. She had history with them, as they previously had moles within the consortium, including teammates that she had before. She had to kill one of her teammates, and the other one ran away. Later on, after Griselda shared this information with the director, the party was cleared to find the mole. They would investigate the sigil within their backs, and they had already recognized it as divine, while also eldritch. But in the meantime, they would find this traitor and they would do this by reporting to a religious city where the assassins from this Crimson Knives group were sighted. They would recover a stolen artifact, and all the while pretend to be clerics. In the meantime, we had a cutscene. A silvery orb powered by one staff. It seemed to be missing 3. The scene shifted again. The director and a friend. A fire genasi. The director was suspicious, to say the least. Grishelda's patron had something going on. He wasn't quite sure what, but it didn't matter as the scene shifted again. A shadowy figure alone in a room. He had a green crown on his head. Snake eyes were behind this figure, projected into the mind of a few party members who had unknowingly taken a second stack of hive mind. And that concludes session 2. Now on to session 3. The group met again before they departed for the city. That gave her the chance to explain that the party was not to make themselves known. That they were a somewhat secret task force with information on them redacted within consortium files. From what almost everyone in the consortium knew, they were just random people assigned to an inconspicuous mission. They hit the road. They all slept for quite a while, and a few of them started waking up and talking along the way. It seemed nice until Maya was shot with a poisoned arrow, and then Grishelda and Leda were also hit. Maya healed Leda while Grishelda went to steer the horses and got everyone away to safety. The others tried to spot and shoot back at the assassin. Taz went up towards the front of the carriage and healed Grishelda, who at this point was doing really bad. But once she was healed, she was able to do the final shot with her gun, as Taz pointed out where they'd figured out the assassin was. This gun kind of struck light down from the heavens, and it was really cool. But it also woke up Yaku. Grishelda healed Maya, and from there on out, they had a peaceful rest of the journey. At the temple, they were clerics, unsurprisingly, but one of them stood out as they came down to welcome the party. They had 9 tails embroidered on their robes. Grishelda explained privately to Makin that he was not to do any sort of magic, which he was not thrilled about, but it began to make sense as the rules of the city were explained. Bowing was a custom, and they were to follow that. There was to be no fighting. They were to report back by the curfew of 11 p.m., and absolutely no eldritch magic was allowed. They were to stay within a temple which had varying statues for various gods, and the party members all began to explore individually. Hamish prayed to Korish, who he recognized as his ancestor. Maya prayed to a dragonborn statue that called to her, and Yaku followed, saying hi to the dragonborn. Not for any particularly religious reason, just because he had wings too. Cersei prayed to Korish as well, but was set on fire and decided to go pray to a kitsune god instead. And some of them had experiences with these gods. Cersei fell unconscious and awoke before this kitsune. He introduced himself as Sora, and Cersei asked him to make him a sandwich. Sora begrudgingly made it, and sent Cersei back to his regular plane. He had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, a vulnerability to fire, and a resistance to thunder, as well as a ghost-like foxtail. Hamish awoke before Korish. They had a nice chat. It wasn't anything substantial. Mostly, who are you? Oh, I'm this person. And Hamish eventually returned, the same as he had been before. Maya awoke before a large dragonborn. She asked for guidance and explained that the party was not the smartest, but was refused, as she was no real cleric, that she bounced between gods and didn't pledge allegiance to anyone. This dragonborn offered her a contract, which also came with barbecue, an invitation to a barbecue, and a small blue pseudo-dragon. Maya couldn't read it, but regardless, she still signed. The stipulations were, as the Scud explained to her, that she was not to associate with Korish, and everything she did was in his name. When he spoke to her, she was to listen. And she was whisked back to reality. She had a plate with barbecue and the small pseudo-dragon with her, as well as a new sigil burned into her hand. Leto prayed to a statue that they didn't quite recognize, and disappeared in a swarm. A cat greeted them, but this cat transformed into a dragonborn who called for their mother. A shadowy figure on a throne was seemingly who this figure was calling for. Mother. Leto recognized that the statue that they had prayed to was a mixture of both this shadowy figure and the cat-turned-dragonborn. The dragonborn was introduced as Clarissa and explained that Leto had come to them. The shadowy figure offered Leto this chance to worship them after Leto offered holy water to the god. Leto was given a contract and said that they would need to think on it. Seems the two understood, as they were brought back to the regular plane of existence and was temporarily resistant to necrotic damage. Taz prayed to a god whose name wasn't known. There's nothing to indicate who this was. He arrived in Fae at a snake-filled workshop. It was a war-forged robot that he met there, who offered Taz a contract. Taz signed it, and once sent back to the regular realm, he gained 9 stacks of hive mind. Hamish decided to pray to a second god. A god with a pretty cool hat. Just one of those cowboy hats. And go figure, he appeared before this god. The god didn't notice him at first and was mumbling rather loud while he wrote, mentioning things about Chicago, Griselda, Crystal, and Lucy. He finally spotted Kamish and introduced himself as Sunflower. He had taken the mantle of his godhood after his father died. Then he went on a ramble, which he seemed to tend to do a lot, and talked about a lot of things. About a cleric with bad math abilities, who Kamish was able to recognize as Maya, and mentioned that he knew her, to which Sunflower was suspicious, but Kamish eventually asked to sign a contract with Sunflower. This led to Sunflower explaining how a veiled assembly member who knew Raikal, this assassin that the party had interrogated previously, had a contract with Sunflower. Kamish was brought back. As this all went down, and no one was paying attention to her, Yaku began pecking on all of the god's statues. She began glowing, and was cursed with Forsaken Oath, which has a couple in-campaign effects. One time a long rest, the DM gets to assign disadvantage on any sort of roll, including death saves. One time per long rest, Yaku has to roll a wisdom save or gain 1 point of exhaustion. This curse can only be broken by doing favors to the gods who she offended, which turns out to be every god except Korish. Round of applause for Yaku. Makin prayed to Sora, the same kitsune that Cersei had prayed to. Sora was not very happy to see Makin because Makin's patron had him as off limits. Makin knew this, but did it anyway, so Sora kicked him out, and instead of coming back to his regular plane of existence, Makin was whisked to his patron's domain. A void, with a shadowy figure on a throne, and Clarissa. Makin was silenced, no longer allowed to speak within his patron's presence. She taunted him, telling him that maybe if he could explain himself, she would lessen his punishment. But, alas, he was silenced. He couldn't do that. He gained 2 stacks of Swarm, another roleplay mechanic that would come into play later. Griselda said that Chicago got her apple pie, and was really concerned about Yaku being cursed and glowing, and Taz having a sigil on his hand that he hadn't noticed before. Hamish visited Korish one more time. There was Raikal, the assassin mentioned earlier, and Raikal said he didn't belong there. A gun was cocked in the background, which Kamish could hear. And Session 3 ended. Session 4 started with Raylan, who was not there for Session 3, but also met a god. There were two twins in one statue, one white, one black. He prayed to the white statue. Unfortunately, he was not sent to meet any god like that. No. He was sent to an abyss and saw a man in a three-piece coat with skin that reflected the image of the night sky. This man asked Raylan what kind of person he was, and Raylan answered, "Probably not a good one," and this man laughed and agreed. Neither of them were. He offered Raylan a contract, and Raylan signed. He agreed to give up everything for the protection of those around him. After that, he was whisked back to the regular plane, and Cersei offered him a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. A voice in his head advised him not to eat it, and he obeyed. Cersei offered this voice, which turned out to be Raylan's god, the sandwich, and the god also declined. Griselda offered them all some of the pie that Chicago had given her. Maya and Taz showed off their new friends. Maya's being a pseudo-dragon, Taz being a little snake. A little robotic snake that he named Loki. Raylan got jealous and ran off into the woods, followed by Leto, while everyone else stood around. He found a squirrel and a raccoon and got backstabbed by a crimson-cloaked assassin. This assassin killed the raccoon, but him and Leto were able to kill this assassin with Raylan's arms growing muscle mass and being able to cleave the offender in two. You would think he would go back, but no. He kept searching and found a wolf puppy. He took this squirrel and the wolf puppy back. Maya healed Raylan after the fight and then took off with his wolf. Raylan punched her, and they both got yelled at by Griselda. She took this opportunity to get them back on task and remind them to behave on this mission, which she explained was to retrieve the Onaka King's staff from the black market. Some of our party members, Raylan, Maya, some others, said that the staff was to be found by any means necessary. That any opposition should be cut down. The party split up. Cersei, Yaku, and Raylan went to a tavern. There were bards, but none of them were performing. So Cersei and Yaku took the stage. They made some good money. Raylan went to gamble, where he met a man named Dandelion. They seemed friendly enough, traded sending stone information, and Dandelion gave him a bag of coins to buy a staff, which could be found with information from a person running a lemonade stand. He only gave this information after Raylan promised to let Dandelion have a go with the staff. But Raylan had been crossing his fingers. The three of them relayed this information to the other group. The other group went to the market, where Maya was cheery and talking about needing a drink. Loki located this lemonade stand, and Maya went over to go talk to the stand owner, whose name was Josh. The stand had certain runes on it, but they disregarded that as Maya bought 60 gold worth of lemonade and asked about the staff under the guise of building an altar to the Onaka King. She showed Josh the sigil in her hand, and he said that he was like her. He followed him too. Josh directed them to an apartment with a crooked handle, but warned them that the man inside was paranoid and named Varen. They would need to take caution. Both teams met up outside the apartment building. Leto, Cersei, and Yaku would stay outside while the others went in. At least that was the original plan, and Yaku followed them in. They only noticed her presence once they managed to get Varen to open the door, so Malkin walked her out. Maya healed some seemingly self-inflicted scratches to gain his trust, and he opened the door more, and they continued to talk. Malkin rejoined them, but that set Varen off. He began asking, "What happened? What happened? Where did the bird go? Did he kill her?" They managed to calm him down, but Taz and Malkin stood outside to discuss some oddities and suspicions with the situation going on. Raylan paid for the staff, using the coins Dandelion had given him. Varen immediately went back on edge, and they noticed that the coins were made of bronze, and on either side were stamps with strange runes matching those on Varen's roof, which were drawn in blood. While Maya and Raylan were distracted by Maya lecturing him about paying attention and trusting people, Varen was struck by 3 arrows coming in through the window, with the only possible source, Maya noticing, being a figure fleeing in the distance. Raylan, in the meantime, heard a warning to never cross his fingers while making promises and heard a revolver. He was shot by a gun, which was not a normal gun. Instead, it shot fire. Maya turned and saw Dandelion, who she didn't recognize, though Raylan recognized the voice, standing behind Raylan. He was holding him at gunpoint and explained that he wanted a bounty of 1.2 million gold, which was being offered for Raylan, and it would make him a king. But the gunshot had alerted Taz, and he snuck up and killed him. Raylan was sad about this, but Maya grabbed the staff and a book with the Crimson Blade symbol on it and left. Taz grabbed 50 gold and a healing potion and left. While they were inside, the team outside of the building heard something about someone being dead, about people screaming because someone was gone. They began to investigate and saw blood running down the street, originating from the lemonade stand that they had been at so recently. There was a sigil in fresh blood, matching that on the stand itself. It was the Crimson Knife symbol, and Josh was nowhere to be found. They met up and decided to return to the temple. Once they reached there, they saw Griselda with 4 dead red-coated assassins, and Griselda said it was a breeze. They could have sent harder enemies, honestly, and they talked. They discovered that Raylan's bounty had went from wanted dead or alive to simply wanted dead. Additionally, they realized that the murder attempts might have been a front or distraction, and that they should be more worried about the likelihood of a mole. Maya relayed that they got the staff as well as a book about the Crimson Blades. Griselda took the book and looked in it to find clues, and came upon writing that seemed oddly familiar to both her and Cersei. The term Swarm Herald, in reference to someone, indications that the book was updated rather recently, and references to the Blighted Wilds, which Griselda said was a divine druid circle. She said she would ask for approval to travel there. Raylan disappeared and spoke with his god, who reminded Raylan that he was not protecting Raylan's friends from everything, just himself. He tried to get information regarding the mole and to argue, but he got nothing. So he sought out another god, sought more guidance, and he heard his god's voice, telling him that it wouldn't work, and that he shouldn't try it again. We had a cutscene. Raquel, in a cell within the transportation vehicle. His wounds were patched, his missing arm was replaced with a prosthetic metal arm, and the door opened. Raquel was met with a guard in a red cloak. And then that ended Session 4. Session 5 opened with a continuation of the same cutscene. Raquel's visitor claimed to be there to collect. Collect what? Who knows? Raquel laughed. He seemed to recognize what was going on and said to free him. And the scene changed. They were back at the temple. Griselda instructed all of them to pack, as they would be leaving for the Blighted Wilds. Korish and Kamish had another conversation. Taz and Kamish, after Kamish's conversation, trained with guns. Leto trained with a punching bag, and Griselda said she wasn't even bad. Maya was not able to hear back from the Onaga King, and Raylan visited his god. Cersei wanted to investigate the book that Maya had found a little more. He learned the choreography hidden within the pages. It was written in a way that replicated a dance that Cersei and his siblings had known. There was unintelligible writing that Cersei couldn't read, but Kamish helped him translate it. It was accompanied by green drawings, which Cersei could remember was his brother Vinny's favorite color. The book was signed by some person named Caliph, but there was no more information on it. Griselda overheard and asked Maya who had the book. She described Varen, and Griselda and Cersei were both a little baffled, but Griselda more so, storming off and telling them it's time to leave. Griselda briefed them and said that Maya is in charge of this mission, and Raylan was second in charge. If they were to mess up, Maya would be sent away, and Raylan would be sent to jail. On the way to the Blighted Wilds, they stopped in a market and got some materials. Each of them got various things, but one thing that did affect multiple people was Makin killed a chicken in front of Yaku, and they began to fight. They were separated and got back on their way to the Blighted Wilds. They discovered that the mushrooms there were not great, that they had some magical properties, which was to be expected from glowing mushrooms, so they began to avoid them. There was also a silver orb that was weird and surrounded by a corrupted area. But that was a problem for another day. They began to set up camp. During this time, Cersei discovered that the ground beneath them was unstable. It could crumble and expose a hole that seemed to never end. He threw a coin down and heard no sound of the coin hitting the floor. From there, they decided what shifts that they would take. Maya and Raylan would take shift 1. Makin, Cersei, and Yaku would take shift 2. The others would take shifts afterwards. During shift 1, Maya and Raylan got into a fight, but nothing happened. Just drama. During shift 2, Yaku went to go chase a bug to eat it, and slipped. She began to fall through the floor as it crumbled beneath her. Cersei, while this happened, heard a coin hitting the floor, and from this hole that he threw a coin down earlier, he saw a column of fire erupt. He cast Featherfall on Yaku, but she still wasn't flying. She wasn't gaining any ground. So Raylan threw a rope down, but wasn't strong enough to pull her up. Maya decided to jump into the hole and sprouted wings from her back. She was able to bring Yaku back up. There was a man who approached, followed by Trians, and applauded the performance, said that it was entertaining, and I really need a drink. Okay. This man introduced that Varen's book introduced him. And maybe it would make more sense about who Varen was if Cersei thought about Vinny. Vinny was whisked away by a swarm into a shadow realm. This was the same shadow realm that Makin and Leto had visited prior to this session. Vinny was brought out by Mother and Clarissa. He had 3 arrows. 3 arrow holes in him. When Cersei offered to help him, Vinny denied, saying that he was perfect, that he was a part of the swarm now. And the blanket of his that Cersei carried with him had the Crimson Knife symbol on it. And the symbol from the apartment also etched onto it. He was shot with 3 more crossbows, and Cersei was brought back. A strange man's swarm brought Varen, also known as Vinny's, body with it. It seemed to be animated. Only for a bit, though, as Raylan shot this reanimation in the head. The strange man explained that he could see what was happening, that he knew where they were, through Makin and Taz's eyes. Taz, who had been faking sleep before this, did not take kindly and threw explosive powder. The man said that he wasn't there to fight them. That his main problem was with Griselda, who had apparently killed his brother. But it's okay, because he did his job. He was just there to cause dismay. And they said that he wasn't doing a very good job at it. However, Cersei proved them wrong, as he shifted into a cheetah and attacked him. The man laughed. He didn't seem very fazed, and revealed that he was there to distract them, and teleported away. Raylan and Leto ran off to investigate what possibly could be changing. They noticed that the magic in the area shifted from divine to eldritch, and there was a temple-like shrine where the silver orb was, and there were cultists surrounding it. Griselda woke up from a spell that this man had put on her, and after hearing what happened, explained that the Swarm Herald leads the assembly and is her ex-brother-in-law, Caliph. Makin theorized that his patron allowed them to spy through him and Taz's eyes. And Taz, who visited his patron, confirmed that the hive mind sigils allowed it to happen. He offered Taz a deal. If he gave him Vinny's soul, he would cure some of the hive mind. Taz accepted and was able to manage to convince Cersei to let him take it. The two of them buried his body, and Griselda, watching all of this happen and hearing everything that Caliph has done, was empowered to destroy the assembly, and they all agreed to fight with her. Leto and Raylan watched as a beam of light emanated from the orb, just for a split second, and the ground began to grow unstable. Another cutscene to the god, using Vinny's soul to continue his work on his construct. It began to grow human parts, and he vowed that he would allow them to roam freely again soon. The shadow figure on the throne seemed to grow uncomfortable. She knew that he was up to something. She knew that she was losing control over Makin, and she decided that it was time to begin to control the hive. That concluded Session 5. Session 6. Leto at the temple had followed Raylan, and he hadn't realized, so he had left. And managed to get knocked unconscious by who knew what. The orb, Leto noticed, was now pulsating green at random intervals, and was at the center of a rapidly hollowing ground. A somewhat metallic, somewhat fleshy pair of hands erupted from the ground. Great wolves transformed into giant abominations, somewhat reminiscent of hellhounds. And Leto began to hold their own against these hounds that descended upon them. The party arrived in time, though Leto wasn't in very much danger, as they were doing very well. Griselda disappeared for a bit and returned with Raylan's unconscious body and his pets. During this fight, Taz received one more stack of hive mind, and Kadish managed to kill a monster that these hellhounds had merged into. The orb pulsated. Some of them took damage, and some of them didn't, but Maya was doing the worst out of anyone. Still, as they grew closer, she shot a cultist with a flame to distract it. It did work, but they got into another fight. The orb pulsated again. Grishella tried to figure out a way to stop the ritual, and Maya began to pray to heal them. Makin backed up and was whisked away to his patron's realm. She noted that he had not pleased her, and through his failures and inadequacy, he had breached their contract. As a punishment, she wouldn't kill him. She wouldn't even kill his friends. Instead, she would take control of his body and force him to do it. The orb pulsated again. Maya went down, and Grishella brought her back to her feet. But while the two of them were together, Makin attacked them. Taz and Cersei ran off to pursue a wolf that had run away from the now dead cultist. Makin was trapped by Leto within a rope. Leto punched him. But through certain skills, this damage was reflected back on Leto, and Leto was downed. Leto transformed into another being and was revealed to be a changeling. They were soon healed, though, and turned back into Leto as they got back onto their feet. Makin fled the scene, but was pursued by Leto and held down. The orb progressed, though, as this all went down, and began to absorb the souls of those nearby. The cultists, the wolves, the forest animals, whoever. The Swarm Herald appeared, with this orb nestling itself neatly into a crown that he had upon his head. He said he would leave them with a gift, and this orb exploded into a 100-meter diameter crater. Taz was downed and fell in. Cersei cast Featherfall on him, and he managed to live, though he was still unconscious for quite a while. The party found Makin, now grappled by Leto, and Grishella shot Makin. He was downed, but she brought him back to consciousness, and the possession ended. He explained that his god had taken over, and that he was too much of a threat to keep around. That he should be killed. And Grishella agreed. She shot him once again, and as he bled out, Cersei and Makin had a talk. Cersei agreed to take on this role of the big brother and take care of the group. He gave Cersei his amber necklace and a horn for each of them, besides Kamish. Besides that, they each got various gifts, be it weapons, teeth, gold, alcohol, whatever. Everyone was mourning during this time, and Makin took the time to confess that he was mean to the party, not because he hated them, but out of fear. Makin died, and the ground opened up and reclaimed him. A tree sprouted above where he had disappeared, and Grishella rested her gun against the tree. Leto threw it at her face, and Grishella said she deserved it. She began to walk back to camp. They all got a message from the director that they were cleared to escort Raikal to jail. And Grishella said that this would be the time. That if any of them were to leave, after knowing what consequences they could face, this would be the time that they should. Maya and Grishella spoke on the way back, with Maya reminding her that she did what she had to that they had to do this by any means necessary. Grishota started crying. Maya comforted her, and the scene shifted back to Taz and his bloody hands as he managed to climb out of this hole. Neda and Cersei had waited for them, and everyone began back to camp. There were 2 cutscenes after this. The first was short. Raquel, with a bloody nose and his arm in a sling. The second was the director surrounded by 5 files, which he was going to pore over to find the mole, and began with an ex-bounty hunter. And then we began session 7. Except I'm going to take a small break, which Starry can fill, because my dog is really hungry.
Where am I feeling? I don't know what session you're on. I got kind of lost. Neve. Buddy left.
I have to feed my dog.
What
I
session?
said I would be taking an intermission.
Oh, okay.
I will be back in maybe 3 minutes, but we are about to start session 7.
Chat. Neve is dead. Here, I'll take over. I'll try. I'll do the Neve special. It's the Starry special now. We're at 7 session. Dude, this is why I don't want to do this shit in the first place, because I keep stuttering. We're at session 7. I got this. I believe in myself. I've played these games before. Just wish, unironically. Neve has these all lined up in the Discord, so it's easy to read. So session 9, session 8, session 7.
I'm
Bruh.
back.
Die. I was just about to read session 7.
Go for it.
Peak. Alright. Session 7. A recap. Freaky Friday. We get freaky. Wait, no we don't. No we do not. No, we do not. Raylan might, but in session 7 Freaky Friday, we get freaky on Friday. As we start off with a cutscene, the director and an orcish man sharing laughs and smiles as a map with the party's location gets a new dot. The scene shifts as the party is brought back to the Spire, which is, I guess, like the base operation for the Aegis Consortium. So kind of take like a offshore black site, like U.S. like special ops facility, yeah, and then make that just like a large fortress, you know, like the size of Fort Sam. By the way, for any federal government people listening, I have never been inside nor near Fort Sam. I am just estimating by what I see on Google Maps. Thank you. As they're back, the atmosphere was heavy as Kame shared their wine, and the party kind of bonded over the next 2 weeks as they did nothing. They're kind of back on like a little relaxation thing. It's their beach episode that doesn't turn into a beach episode. After that time, they woke up with some hangovers. 2 weeks later, they woke up with a hangover one day. As injuries were on some of them, and a note demanding their in-uniform attendance at a meeting with the director. Some of them remember, like a night before, a insane bar fight. As when they reach the meeting, the director is absolutely fucking fuming. He told them of the updates to their team after getting scolded, that since Makin's death, they'll be getting a new teammate, a druid from another town, as they were to meet a former bounty hunter for their next mission. Which he also said is they were to escort the aforementioned Raikal to the Oblivion Vault. They were told exclusively to not fuck it up, but you know how we get in D&D. It's Freaky Friday for a reason. As Grishota would be at the Spire on comms, kind of just running everything, as Grishota's arm is in a sling. As they go out to eat, they recruited a random water genasi by the name of Kyle. As Kamish, however, eavesdropped on Grishota and the director, as the director threatened to demote Grishota and put her in the field alone, cut the team, and drop Raylan off at the Oblivion Vault if she failed. As Kamish relayed that information to the team, they were summoned to the team meeting room to go over specifics for their mission. As Grishota, of course, reinstated their goal that they were to safely transfer Raquel from cuffs to cell. They were to not touch anything sealed, not to let anyone out, even if they know them, and they were to always keep the cuffs on until the sealing ritual was virtually over. They would each get a water-breathing potion with a 3-minute duration, because, drum roll please, everyone could do the little patter-patter thingy. They were to be traveling by ship. As the crew is known to Grishota, she's used them before, as they'd be meeting the bounty hunter there and the new person. Grishota warned them to not tell anyone about the mole yet, as Laziel, the new party member, the replacement for Makin, introduced himself, as he and Cersei kind of hit it off over clothing, while the others went to pack their own items just for the ship, see how things are going to go. Who knows if they'll be back or not. Subtle foreshadowing. At the dock, Raquel was joined by an orc, one who Tass recognized. It was his former mentor Oren, as he immediately recognized Taz as well as Raylan, who he said he would have killed if the consortium hasn't offered him a higher pay. They were informed Kamish could also sleep in the captain's quarters because he was now the captain of said mission, as Raylan was requested to be talked to by Captain Harvey. In the talk, Raylan and Harvey catch up, which is kind of like Raylan used to travel with his crew. This used to be Raylan's old pirate crew, now turned privateers, ever since Raylan left. And in Neve's notes, I quote, "I hate Harvey," as Harvey invites Raylan over for dinner after their little catch-up time, as Raylan, just agrees, and that's where we do a time skip, because for the sake of brevity, we have to do time escapes, right? As normally before this mission, they told Kyle to not follow them. And then they find Kyle on board after the ship sailed. As Laz and Cersei talked, Laz told Cersei that Makin liked Cersei. But Cersei also tried smoking with Laz and didn't really like it, but pocketed a few for later for someone he might know likes them. As Harvey and Raylan's dinner was interesting, Harvey admitted to killing the past captains in order to attain the power of ship captain, and all but blackmailed Raylan into getting back together with him. And I quote from Neve's notes: Raylan accepted as the party was indirectly threatened, then got drunk after Harvey left him alone. While Leto watched Raquel and Raylan stayed in the quarter ships, and the ship was attacked. 3 Captain Knife members and one big giant sea serpent thingy. As the party, besides the two that were kind of just slumped, and Leto watching Raquel fight it, as Laz and Maya fall overboard, but Laz immediately gets back on. Maya does fucking not, as she is wet. She is wet by the water, as she's eventually able to come back on, of course, as the party kills the last 2 assassins while the pirates kill the last one, as the serpent pretty much explodes in the water and is dead. It's quite obvious this serpent wasn't a normal serpent, it was probably magical, as that ends with a cutscene as Makin in chains in front of a throne, as there's a trial of some sorts. Session 8. Jailbreak.
You stealing my job, or you want me to take over again?
So I don't want to say the name because this is a devious ass name. So this is a devious ass name to name this session. But it's called Session 8 Jailbreak, aka Diddy's Unfinished Business. I want to let it be known, I was given a script for a character, an NPC to play, and I played my role. I did not expect it to literally be verbatim, kind of like Diddy. I actively do want to delete this this entire session from.
Wait, no, I'll change the name. Change the name.
Change this name. This is a devious. So the whole thing was Harvey was an ex-lover that liked Raylan, but Harvey's lust for power and money kind of corrupted that entire relationship. As Harvey became a little bossy and as now that Harvey has all that he wants, the one thing that he's missing is romance, and he still likes Raylan. And then from there, everyone was like, Diddy. I was like, no. Stop. No. No. And Harvey was actually supposed to be a recurring character, but yeah, no. I did not. Nope. Nuh-uh. Did not keep him around too long. Where's the rename, Neve? I'm waiting.
Hold on.
I'm faster. I'm faster and rename it.
Harvey's Unfinished Business.
Yeah.
Do you want to go over this one, or do you want me to go ahead and take over again?
I don't know. I flashed a text message from the group chat. That's kind of funny. Anyway, I'll do this session. I got this.
Okay. Just let me know when you want me to.
We open with the cutscene. As Makin faced his patron at the trial, as she was pretty much being egged on to give him various types of trials, but eventually settled by a trial by combat. If he were to win, his soul would be freed, and if he was to lose, he would join her ranks, as he was tasked with fighting a male half-wood elf by the name of Varys. Long story short, Makin had no shot. Bro got cooked, as he woke in front of Kalith in the realm of the living. As the scene shifted to the party on the ship, as they did a lot of shit, as Maya kind of healed Thor after the fight, which is my pseudo dragon. Laz handed out new outfits, and Leda was a victim to Raquel's complaining. As Harvey called a meeting, they were entering pirate waters, which means attacks were more likely, as they were getting close to the end of their journey. Also, they all bullied Kyle. Kamish threw alcohol at Kyle, and got away with it because a fucking annoying ass roll. Hector, I love you, Pookie. As they time skip one day. As they reach a sandbar island, its only notable feature was a cave entrance. So like a sandbar island with a rock that has a hole in the ground. Pretty much. And no like ships were around, only like kind of merchant ships. This is also like a fair like way to travel merchant area. This is how they like do like trades with like little islands and outposts. So yeah. As Raquel, when they entered the cave, kept yapping, so they gagged him and descended into the cavern. As the cave seemed to go on kind of for a little bit of a while, gradually getting deeper into open into a cave system with a large obelisk in the middle. As jagged mouth-like edges lined the cave, which spoke to some party members and dealt damage. As, of course, this is some sort of magic encasing the thing, just, keep people out. As Raylan kept singing clown music and Orin threatened to kill Raylan. Rightfully so. I quote from Neve's notes. Some notable names were seen, kind of on the sigil. The obelisk had like sigils and runes that spelled out names of the prisoners that were on there. Some of the notable names was the Ringmaster, Anubis, Ump, and Martok, the Mad King Kobold. After trying to decipher a magic-based puzzle, Leto randomly chose the correct answer, which is conjuration, and they were whisked away by magic to the inside of the Oblivion Vault. As the prison went up to the heavens and almost descended down to the hells, Raquel was able to put in section C level 120, as like this prison was like pre-made by the gods, which you'll find out later in the session. As it turned out, everyone had a room. Like the gods planned to put everyone that was born, boom, there's a new cell for them, just in case. As Orin explained, the Oblivion Vault is a just-in-case structure meant to be able to contain everyone. On that topic, once they reached the correct cell, Orin confirmed that he could perform the ritual to seal away Raquel. Thus he begun. Unfortunately, they had visitors, which was Harvey donning a crimson cloak, which was approached by two corrupted beasts. He claimed to have unfinished business and began a fight. Not long after, Orin, as we change to quotation marks, opened the cells whilst breaking the lights in the prison, as he shapeshifted into a fire genasi and disappeared with Raquel in tow. I think one thing that you guys are going to learn in this campaign is that they have teleportation magic. A lot of it. Because the level of wizardry or sorcery that they're at. So I hope the players in the campaign get that soon. As notably, a kobold and an 8-armed man, which is known as the Ringmaster, left. As Harvey told them to kind of dip. As Harvey and the two beasts stay behind, Laz's ring glitched, revealing projection of Caliph from a dragon's eyes, explaining the existence of the Crimson Swords, an elite force necessary for the completion of his plans, as the sheen sifted to the heavens. The Onaga King called a meeting to talk about urgent matters. He explained what Maya had told him. He proposed discussing breaking the 5 sigils, which are the laws that keep the gods from directly interfering with the world while simultaneously keeping the overgods from doing pretty much anything. They didn't take kindly to that, nor the suggestion of lending mortals the power of gods. Sunflower mentioned that the abjuration sigil in the Blighted Wilds had been broken, and it was also mentioned that Griselda, a demigod, is Chicago's daughter, and Kalis is also a demigod, of who you do not know yet. Eventually, it was decided to lend the party some aid using Thor. Thor was Kurish's great dragon that he rode during the previous war, now reborn as a pet, the Onaga King had confirmed. However, they agreed to allow him to arise to his former power if the need arose for the party, as they also agreed to give the party the locations of the remaining seals. The final note of the meeting was the lack of the Unknown's presence. Without him, they could not get a unanimous vote to break the seals. Even if they had decided to, the meeting ended. Upon their departures, a throne began to rise from under Sunflower's seat, as the cutscene had ended, and so had the session. Neve!
Yes.
I keep getting distracted. Session 9. What the fuck is his name?
Session 9. A session with a very inconspicuous name. We start with a cutscene from 5 years and 2 months ago.
The name of the session is Diddy's Downfall.
A little budgie, her father, and her brother. All 3 of them are gardening. And this budgie, who we'll come to know as Yaku, remembered a rumor of a dangerous, wild forest spirit, a deer-skulled cryptid, allegedly. Not that she believed it, I mean, it was a myth. They had a fun time. Well, gardening until her father had to go do something. He gave her a pan flute to entertain herself. And Yaku remembered something as this memory ended. On this day, 5 years and 2 months ago, she heard Griselda's voice. And the scene shifted back to the present. The party was fighting against Harvey. He said he really, really wanted to kill Raylan, and that he was leaving Kamish for a friend. As they fought, Raylan was downed, and a silver orb appeared. They were going to destroy the place. And much to her surprise, Sunflower spoke to Maya, introducing himself, and warning them to either stop the process or leave before they all die. Also showed up, a deer-faced cryptid beast. The orb rose and was absorbed into its chest, and Harvey released a tidal wave, and everyone except Yaku and Kamish were downed. Everyone has new battle scars after that. Taz was downed during this, and as before, so was Leto, and but Taz also transformed. Everyone was brought up shortly after. Cersei pulled something very, very awesome and cool, and used command Harvey grovel. Taz used this opportunity to kill Harvey. Raylan took Harvey's dagger, 50 gold, his crimson knives pendant, and a pendant with the 5 elements of fire, acid, thunder, cold, and poison. Yaku took his clothes. And they left through a portal, returning to the cave they'd been in before. Within this cave, they saw crimson knives and purple-robed figures enchaining an orb. It was descending through the obelisk, which was being destroyed as it went through. The party realized they wouldn't be able to take this fight on right now. So they left, and as they did so, there was an explosion behind them. The Badge, the pirate ship that Harvey had been using, was still there, and they boarded, as Kyle said that he could sail. Maya left, Raylan left, and Cersei confronted Taz and Leto. Taz confirmed that he was, in fact, a changeling, and Leto said that they're just Leto. Though Taz noted that they were like him. Cersei eventually made a comment about trust and walked off. The party saw the cryptid beast disappear with a snap from that island and left behind a tree similar to Grishelda's and Makin. Maya, from this crow's nest, saw a fleet of Lorien ships being attacked by both the Crimson Knives and Draxorian ships, and remembered something. Roughly 11 years ago, she left her village. The priests and everyone else, she thought, were crazy, and as she left, saw the traditional robes of her village being exchanged for purple robes. She also saw a high priest in a distorted, nature-y figure, half covered in cloth, talking and shaking hands as though they were making a deal of something. She saw that priest glaring at her before going on his own way as she left on her own. Back in reality, she began to pray in the crow's nest. Not to the Onoka king, but to Sunflower. And she appeared in a field where things were on fire, and the only others there, they were not Sunflower. They were purple-robed figures praying to not a god, but an orb. The orb had the 5 elements on it, and it asked, "Who dares?" And Maya was silent. She felt a burning in her soul and was sent back to the crow's nest. The scene changed again, and Yaku remembered that she'd seen Ump before. She was playing in her treehouse 5 years ago, and this little budgie heard a ruckus, which wasn't new, but she was curious. She saw village warriors fighting off purple-robed figures, and her father joined her in the treehouse, urging her to run, to give an envelope that he gave her to a rose person. So she listened. She was ambushed by 2 raven-faced attackers, and her mother leapt over and saved her from these 2. Ump, this deer-faced cryptid, turned to them and punched a hole through her mother's stomach. Used her heart as a stone to kill someone else, and it's likely going to descend upon young Yaku, but Grishelda, along with others, who were mostly tieflings, came to fight the beast. Yaku, in hindsight, recognized one of the tieflings as Kamish. She ran. Another cutscene in present day. It was aboard a Crimson Knives ship. From the point of view of a crewmate. This crewmate, along with his peers, were being commanded by a dragonborn. A dragonborn with crimson drapes over his body, whose name was Makin. And that concludes Session 9. Session 10 began with a memory of Kamish's from 5 years and 2 months prior. It was his first time leading his own team into battle. Grishelda was there, though she was mostly to make sure nothing bad happened. Not that she thought that anything would, after all, they already knew a cult plan to attack some bird village. On the way there, they saw a plume of smoke. Then purple-robed cultists, and then a 7-foot-tall Ump, who Kamish had known would be there. During the battle, at some point, he noticed a small bird and her father, but went to confront Ump. Him and his men weren't doing as well as they thought they had been, so Grishelda tried to help. But as Kamish watched, Ump sent her away magic. Before long, he realized that the entire village was dead. His troops were slaughtered. He was the last one alive. Save for the cultists that, one by one, began to surround him. One of them asked repeatedly if he wanted to spare his own life. Kamish tried to fight back, to no avail, and Ump grew impatient, instructing this one cultist to turn him or to finish him. Kamish was bit. He thought he was dying, but woke up next to Grishelda. She said there seemed to have been a ritual, and his squad was gone. He saw this cultist from a distance away, had notably sharp teeth. And the scene shifted back to the boat. By now, the whole party had been aware of the ship and the fleet fighting, and discussed what to do, as the three fleets blocked the way back to the consortium's headquarters. And they decided to become involved. This was only after they thought of lying their way through, which led to them noticing within the captain's quarters was the pirate crew of the Badge, who had been bitten and drained of blood, save for the cook, who had been stabbed 30-something times. Kyle noted that he knew the Queen of Lorien, and knew her rather well. They'd gone on dates before. And with a little help from Cersei, managed to get permission to enter on Lorien's side. They fought well, until they were eventually boarded by both ships. Maya was downed again, and everyone else fought even better. Cersei managed to take control of the Drixonian ship and its crew, naming a water genasi named Kevin as his second-hand man. And come to find out, Kevin and Kyle are cousins. Kevin pointed something out to the party, though. On a Crimson Knife ship that was retreating was Captain Mockin, a recent recruit to the Crimson Swords. And they confirmed that this was their Mockin, and he hated the Consortium. Cersei relayed the information to Griselda, and the scene shifted to a memory of Raylan's from 13 years in the past. He was running around with a street gang, with his friends. They called themselves the Crimson Knight. They had no cares in the world, as their parents. Raylan didn't know much about the personal lives of all of them, but his parents, his mother and his father, were members of the Crimson Swords. They didn't have the time to spare to pay him much mind, but that was only until a letter came in, and Raylan found out his father had died. From there on out, his mother paid him more mind, tried to be better, more present. But they still struggled to have food on the table. God forbid they tried to live a comfortable life. This continued for the next year, until they met a man called Caleb. Raylan didn't know much about him, except that he promised to change everything for them, as he ran away from home. But even now, Raylan longed for home and wanted to know where his mother ended. The scene shifted to 2 days before the fleet battle, as a woman called Rosia, Raylan's mother, accepted a purple robe and was welcomed into the elites of the Crimson Swords. The scene changed to the Onaga King's domain, where we learned that he wasn't feeling well, which was odd for a god. He couldn't feel Maya's presence, much less communicate with her whatsoever, even with Thor. Though, that might have been because Thor wasn't with Maya at the time. His throne had cracks in it, which was new, and there was a rift in the void. This rift confused him, but he was soon met with a dismembered figure, one with 5 heads that spoke to him, that taunted and said that they held the missing part of his power. That the old gods were getting power, being remembered, and this one, in particularly, wasn't happy that the Onaga King's cleric had killed Harvey, their subject. And now, this old god would have to take it upon themselves to punish their cleric. After all, why wouldn't they? they had the empath parts of the Onaga King's power, which I should mention for the viewers. Maya is a homebrew cleric subclass called an empath cleric. And it didn't matter. Anyway, as Maya and the Onaga King had been unwittingly working in their favor, both this five-headed dragon gods and their acquaintances' favors. The scene shifted to Taz. He prayed, and he got what he wanted. He went to the unknown's domain, which was now empty, with only the unknown and his construct. They spoke. They had a nice chat, and the unknown had been busy. They eventually talked about current matters, and the unknown mentioned that he was friendly with Ump, that they had met 5 years and 2 months ago after Ump banished Griselda and found bagels and coffee, and brought it to the unknown. He mentioned that he had life crystals of a sort, and that Loki was too unstable of a creation to have one. But the unknown gave him glyphs instead that would enhance him going forward, and he mentioned that he had been using a book known as the Book of Stylus, which allowed for even the recreation of life. He mentioned that Vinny's soul was doing well. It was doing wonderful, actually, as it was powering one of his most after projects, called Project Stylus. And that, in unrelated matters, his cleric friend should go check on her patron, as he didn't seem to be doing so well. He seemed to be acting different. They parted ways, and Taz immediately shared the concern about her patron to Maya. So she prayed, but entered a different domain than the one she knew. One with a sleeping dragon. A large sleeping dragon, think the size of the Empire State Building. It was then she noticed a little Thor on her shoulder, her pseudo-dragon that had been missing. Thor puffed just a bit of lightning, which was absorbed into the larger beast and disappeared. The Thor on her shoulder disappeared as this larger dragon woke up and introduced himself as Thor. He said he'd been asleep for so long. One time he was awake in a battle against his mother. Then he was awake on Maya's shoulder, and then he was awake here. Maya asked why he had fought against the Onaga King, and he said, no, the Onaga King was more like his mother. It was more like they were getting a divorce, and he said he couldn't name her, as she likely wouldn't like that, and fell back asleep not too long after, as Maya was whisked away to avoid. Now, she was met with 5 dragons, she thought at first. 5 dragons that were 10 times the size of this Thor that she had just... Until she realized that these dragon heads were connected to one body. A body that spoke and knew Maya. This dragon introduced herself as Maya's patron. Maya was confused. So this dragon went on to explain that she was a patron of those under the Onaga King's former empath. And that Maya could call her Mom, Mother, or Tiamat. Yes, it's that Tiamat. She explained that Maya was no longer a cleric, that she was a subject, like Harvey. Oh, Harvey. Tiamat had liked him, as he was evil. She played favorites, and Harvey was one of those. So, Maya, to be punished for being involved in his death. That punishment would come later, as she had to have a chat with her son, and she sent Maya away. Maya felt a burning on her hand, and watched as the Onaga King's sigil changed into that of Tiamat. That concluded Session 10. We move on to session 11, which also began with a cutscene. 5 years and 1 month after Yaku's family was killed. When she had been running so long. She had been running so long that she was almost there, where she needed to be. Which she couldn't make it. She was so tired after so long and just needed a rest. She fell unconscious, and this bird woke up to an orc. He questioned who she was and learned the situation. He offered her some worms, which the starving budgie gratefully, and escorted her to the city. They parted ways, and he gave this budgie a card that read Orin, name Vor in parentheses. She didn't hold on to it as she ate it and then threw it up. During this time, 2 children snuck up on the budgie. They introduced themselves as Ophelia and Vinny. They'd initially wanted to steal her food, but she had nothing but regurgitated worms to offer, and they didn't want that. So they brought her with them to meet Cain, another, albeit older, child. He wasn't impressed with this bird. It was another mouth to feed, and he learned when they were introducing themselves that this bird had no name to give him. So Vinny introduced the idea of calling her Yaku. And after learning that Yaku was also an orphan, Cain invited Yaku to stay, which she accepted. The scene shifted once again to Cersei and Rose. Cersei was leaving Miss Rose's house. His lesson for the day in dancing was finished. He'd be there to visit again tomorrow, but in the meantime, he also wanted to visit his siblings. He was going to be so busy soon, he had a life to go live. So they said their goodbyes, and Cersei departed. Rose, however, was also busy as Cersei left. She spoke aloud, noticing that someone was there. This person spoke back and said that they wanted Cersei, but Rose refused and said that he deserved better. However, he wasn't the only option, Rose explained, and she said that she had a few other people who might work just as well. And the scene changed back to the tent that Vinny, Ophelia, Cain, and Yaku had been in. By this point, Yaku had left. She went on her own way, and that was good for her, as the 3 of them had been starving for 2 weeks. Starving so much, in fact, that Vinny was hearing things. Bordering psychosis, if you could even call it bordering by this point. But there was a knock, and Cain answered it. A man had come with a feast, saying that he heard orphans needed help. And Cain was skeptical, but Miss Rose appeared and explained that he was trustworthy, and gave out the food. Miss Rose confirmed that Cersei wouldn't be coming back, that he would have by now, if he were to. And the strange man explained that he wanted to help them. He explained that he wanted to build a world where peasants could be kings, that they weren't doomed to this life forever. And they wanted to help, but Caliph, the name of this man that Rose called him, explained that the kings would have to be safe from death. That shouldn't be a worry that they had to face. Caliph brought someone named Strahd in. Yes, that's Strahd, and asked if they would like to save their lives. Rose asked if he was sure, and he said he had never been so sure in his life. Cain agreed that he would do it, but whatever it was, he had to do it to him first. Because he would do anything to prevent them from being hurt again. And the scene changed back to the boat. Kevin and Kyle reintroduced themselves after so long. And they had a good time until Griselda messaged and said that they were to help the Lorien Empire defend against a siege in a city called Calidor. Moreover, they were not to lose this fight, as this war was different than previous missions. Kyle let the Queen know that they were on their way. They had a rest, and the party woke up to various things. Maya noted that Thor was back. They went on a walk around the Sister Twister, which Cersei had declared the name of the Draxorian ship that he took over, and Kevin held a therapy session. Taz, who had found a map of the badge in Kyle's room, met up with Kyle and asked if he knew anything about a forge that was seemingly on. Kevin pointed it out, and he found it. It wasn't a good forge. It was not well maintained, whatever, by any means whatsoever. But he managed to make a mace, armor, and left to go find Maya. He gave it and a shield that they found to her. Meanwhile, Kamish decided to fish for sharks with dead bodies aboard the badge. He tied one up on a rope and used it as bait. He intended to catch sharks, but instead he caught a giant tentacle that took the body and then took the badge and began to shake it. By now, aboard the Sister Twister, Cersei and Laz had joined them, and they looked into the water. And Cersei, Laz, Maya, and Taz saw a kraken, a baby kraken, shaking the ship. And it's at this point that Starry retconned the Druid class, because the 2024 nerf was insane. Druids are now able to speak freely to animals without using a spell. So, Laz made a deal with Cthulhu, this kraken that introduced himself. And it's important to note that Cthulhu, the entity, is not canon in this universe. He just used the name. This creature was also known affectionately by the party as Dave and Davy. And Dave would help them, and they would feed him. And then, after the fight, he would go tell his mother and ask for reinforcements. Laz, at this time, told a little bit more about himself as he pulled Cersei aside after the fact and told him that his father used to be a bounty hunter and gave him a really cool lighter. He also used to make masks. Leto did something very, very, very important and made cake for Yaku. She was very happy after that. Then the crew arrived at the docks of Calidor. The docks were filled with fleet battles, and Davy was sent off and managed to sink an entire ship of Draxonian soldiers. The party disembarked, with Kyle and Kevin being left behind. Leto was met with a sneak attack from Raquel. They fought him and were able to kill him, they thought. But as he died, he melted into a pile of snow. Taz recognized this as a wizard spell, a simulacrum that was within the books that he had. The book that he had. This was not Raquel. It was a carbon copy, but a bit weaker. A soldier from the Loriens came. A soldier from the Loriens came running up to them and said that they were to meet General Bubble within an old church of Soros. On the way, the townspeople were excited to see them, but also busy. They were preparing themselves to band together and defend their city with everything that they had. They eventually reached the church and saw Bubbles and his men fighting, but they won the fight, and Bubbles introduced himself. The party found out that he had dissociative identity, and They were very different identities. If he comes up, it may be hard to follow, but either way, he mentioned that he would fight for the city, as he had a lover within its borders, and Kyle also showed up. Things began to drop from the rafters, and the party noticed purple-robed figures within them. But by the time they did, they were all frozen. A fire tornado appeared on the altar with two people emerging from it, one shorter, one taller. Lass was able to recognize the masks that they wore as the Keeper and the Shadow from his collection. The taller began speaking to Raylan, taunting him, saying how they never expected their son to leave them for pirates. That, as a mother, it was new and unexpected. She kept going, and then referred to the smaller figure, giving her a chance to speak. Cersei recognized the voice as Ophelia. She had very personal words to share with him. Words about how he left them to die, how Ophelia had to kill Vinny before something else would happen, and how she would kill Cersei too the next time that they met. Because Cersei would be the vengeance that Vinny deserved. The taller figure, Rosia, as Raylan would now recognize her, began to speak again. She told them to go home, stop this, that they really had no choice in the matter, that the ruins around the church would level it and the surrounding city if they were to try to leave. And this was her final, non-violent warning for him. As the two of them began to walk towards a portal that had opened, revealing Calith sitting on a throne of skulls on the other side. The party was unfrozen. At this point, Rosia took off her mask, and Cersei was able to see that Raylan's mother was Miss Rose. Cersei yelled after Ophelia, though, and it did nothing. She didn't believe that he meant no harm and that he would... She was set. Laz, on the other hand, was very, very upset that they were using his masks for evil. He began to threaten them and berate them, though they had no reaction, so he implied that they should know him, know his father. The party didn't recognize the name that he said. But either way, Rose didn't seem to care. Raylan comforted Cersei as Rose and Ophelia left through this gate that had opened. He explained that Rose was never a good mother and that this wasn't out of character. That they couldn't do anything besides keep fighting, and Cersei agreed. The scene changed one more time. I lied. It changed again. Griselda was walking alongside another woman. She was happy, in a way, as she was home, and it had been so long, but she was home. She explained to this woman that Calith was back again, and was a problem. What's more, Rose was with him. Griselda's sister, Rose, was with him. She hadn't known for a while as they contact after the last time they spoke, being Rose telling Griselda to save her son. So Griselda asked Vivlian if she would join the war, and Vivlian accepted. The scene changed to the void. The unknown was scribbling until he stopped. He realized he had figured it out. The books were synchronized, and he had finished his part, and all that was left was for Taz to do his. The scene changed one more time, to a chair, with Calith sitting. And that concludes session 11. I'll let Starry speak. Thank you. Oh my god! Hooray! You guys will come to learn I need it because my rolls are horrific. Yes.
You know what's funny? I don't think OBS picked up any of that, like at all, because I was muted on OBS.
No.
That's so wild.
What?
Yeah. So we'll be back live. I hope you guys enjoyed the little recap of everything that's going on. I know a lot of people have questions about who is this person, where is this person coming from, whose backstory is this person coming from, why is this person like this? Your questions will be answered. I will see you all in the next one. Bye. Hopefully OBS caught the last part. Otherwise, he's doing this part again. Womp.
Bye.
Bye.